else? Okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank all of you for sharing your personal stories about this, because this is personal. And I'm sure it is not easy to do, but I think it's critical to do. I think part of what's happened here with this issue is that only one side of the story was really told, by and large. And part of that is the power of money to get a message out, with PACs and so on. And so often, I think the truth about how policies, how politicians, how government and their decisions affects people is a story that we don't hear enough and understand enough. And I believe that the stories that we have heard tonight should be heard by everybody in this state. That's how we start to learn. That's how we start to change. That's how we start to understand our responsibility as citizens, as leaders, people in government, for the decisions that we make. So I want to continue to find ways to have your stories be heard. And we're going to continue to think about that. And that's part of what this campaign is about, my campaign. Part of it is to get me elected, and part of it is to give people a voice. Because I think people haven't had a voice here, and I think that's part of what's wrong with the system. And it's part of how we end up with bad decisions like this. So I want to say a little bit about the truth of what happened with the pensions, a little bit about how that fits into the larger problems that I think we're talking about, how it fits into the system, and what's at the root of some of these problems. I want to ask Tom to come up and share his thoughts on this, and then we can talk a little bit about where we go from here. So the truth is that while there were some changes that could have been made years ago to the pension system, the drastic cuts that Governor Raimondo put in place did not need to be made. They were not necessary. Secondly, she then went, as people have mentioned here tonight, and took the pension out of stable index funds and invested them in high-risk, high-fee hedge funds. She did it even when the most famous investor in the world, Warren Buffett, warned states all around the country not to do it. He said, this is going to be a bad investment. And he wasn't the only one. This was not an unforeseen problem, what ended up happening. It was a foreseen problem, foreseen by Warren Buffett and lots of other experts. But Governor Raimondo chose to take the pension fund after she made the cuts and invested in these high-risk, high-fee funds. And what happened? Compared to what the pension fund would have earned in just stable index funds, she lost $500 million for the pension fund in those high-risk, high-fee funds. And then on top of that, she paid from state coffers over $200 million in fees to those hedge funds that performed badly. So when you take the drastic and immediate and unnecessary cuts to the pension fund, and then you take the investment in these failed hedge funds and the fees that they were paid, it was, as others before me have said, a massive transfer of wealth from working Rhode Islanders to hedge fund managers. And that was bad for Rhode Islanders across the board. It was bad for the pension fund, it was bad for retirees, it was bad for workers, it was bad for the state. The only ones it was good for were the hedge fund managers, who made over $200 million in fees, even though they performed badly, and Governor Raimondo. Because putting all that money into Wall Street hedge funds was a huge boost in her fundraising. She became, as people know, this became her pitch around the country. that she slashed the pensions and moved it into the latest and greatest investment idea, these hedge funds. So that became her fundraising pitch, and she raised a lot of money from that, quote, pension reform. She even, as people in this room are probably aware, got an award from the Manhattan Institute, a right-wing outfit, and accepted that award, and that also boosted her Wall Street fundraising. So all of this hurt many in the room here tonight, as we've heard, hurt people across the state, and benefited no one except for Governor Raimondo. I would also say that this is part of a larger problem. This is part of a system that is working only for big corporations, the very, very wealthiest people, and Wall Street, and leaving everybody else out. When I say system, that includes our government. And this is a democracy where the government is supposed to be working for the people. But the system has been corrupted, as we know, by the flood of campaign contributions from corporations, the wealthiest 1%, and Wall Street. So this is part of a larger problem, this pension, quote, pension reform that Governor Raimondo led is part of a larger problem. And I think it's hard to imagine that certainly that there's a Democrat in the country who's more entrenched in that system than Governor Raimondo. And we know what the results of that are. So the pension cuts led to what we've heard tonight, very painfully heard tonight. It hurt people across the state. The Medicaid cuts, $125 million in Medicaid cuts, which also, by the way, leave another $125 million or so in federal funds in Washington. We go to another state that we don't get because those funds are matched. $125 million in Medicaid cuts hurt people. People lost their care. Nursing homes were closed. The cuts to the Department of Human Services, while she's prematurely launching UHIP, cutting 40 people who had the most experience, and we know how that ended. Tens of thousands of families gone hungry without the ability to see a doctor. We know what happened when she failed to appoint a director to the DCYF and cut those funds. We know the tragic results of that. So it's part of a system. It's part of an ideology of looking out for the corporations who get there seems to be plenty of money for them under Governor Raimondo for special individual tax breaks, while all of these other cuts happen that hurt people. So we've got to see this in a bigger picture of what's of this system that she is so entrenched in. So I believe that we can change these things. And I believe that based on my own life experience, not based on a naive or pie-in-the-sky idea, but based on my own experience. I've spent my whole life working to change things and make our community stronger, make our state more just, make our world safer. This is what I did since I was a little kid. My mother was an activist for economic justice, for children. And she took me out with her. I was on her hip and then by her side. And this is what I've always done. And I've seen change happen. When we come together, when we find the strength to fight, we can change things. So 25 years ago this year, I helped to start the city here. And we work, as you all know, the primary work we do is supporting what teachers do in the public schools. And City Year is a program that's gone on for 25 years, getting young people involved in changing their communities. And I was out 25 years ago on the courts in the housing projects when they had something called midnight basketball. And I would go out on the courts and try to recruit young people, some of whom were in gangs, some of whom had dropped out of high school, into City Year to get their high school diploma, to serve their communities. And they get a scholarship for college at the end. I saw lives change all the time, year after year at City Year. And all the way up through being Secretary of State, and right through starting and running Global Zero. where we advocated effectively around the world for treaties to reduce nuclear arms and limit the spread of nuclear weapons. And we were nominated twice for the Nobel Peace Prize for that work. So I have seen change happen. I've never done it alone, but I've done it side by side with others. So I know that we can make our state reflect our values. Rhode Islanders are better than this system that I just described that is so unjust. Rhode Islanders are good, hardworking, just, compassionate, kind people. And all we want is a state that reflects those values. And I know that we can make it happen. I know it from my own experience. I know we can do it. I know we can have a Rhode Island where every single person can afford to go to the doctor without fear of going broke. Where all of our children, regardless of their zip code, can get a quality education. Where we can lead the country in renewable energy and return the profits to the people. Where everyone can have a job that pays, they can have a home they can afford, they can have a future for their children, and I also know that we can restore annual pension increases to our retirees and workers. And we have put forward a proposal to do it. We can give it to you. It's outlined on our website. We can talk about it tonight. We can talk about it in the future. As Mary Beth said, there's no one way to do this. We need to have an open and productive conversation with leading experts like Tom and others and figure this out. But we can do it. We have to do it. It's about priorities. It's just about priorities, and it's about hard work. And it's about honest conversation. And it's about conviction. And it's about commitment. But mostly, it's just remembering the simple fact about democracy, which has been broken, in my view, which is that government in a democracy has one job, and one job only, and that's to look out for the people.
Yes.
That's it. It's not to look out for the corporations, it's not to look out for their lobbyists, it's not to look out for their PACs, it's not to look out for the fossil fuel industry and the drug industry and all the rest of it. It's to look out for the people of the state. That's the one job this government has. So I'm taking no corporate PAC money, no corporate lobbyist money, no money from the fossil fuel industry or any of that. We got to put an end to that connection and that corruption of our political system. So as I said, there were numerous things that Governor Raimondo did that were bad and wrong for the pension system. Part of it was the drastic cuts. Part of it was the bad investment. Part of it was going to a hybrid system, which someone earlier mentioned was written up in the New York Times today, right? Is that you mentioned the New York Times?
Yeah.
Yesterday's New York Times, which talked about the fact that bankruptcies of older people in our country are skyrocketing. And one of the reasons they're skyrocketing is because of the shift to 401k style retirement plans. What did Governor Raimondo do? She took a defined benefit traditional plan, invested in stable index funds, and I'm sure Tom's going to talk a little bit about this, and created this hybrid plan that includes 401k style individual plans. Exactly the wrong way to go. So there are a whole number of things that she did wrong with her so-called reform. Wrong based on how it affected people, wrong based on what most of the experts think, and wrong based on the outcomes of her investments. We've got to look at all these things. What I've started with is the simple idea of getting back some annual pension increase. And that's where we've begun, and we've done a lot of work on it, a lot of analysis with a lot of experts, and we'd love to get feedback on the plans and continue to discuss that over the coming weeks, but more importantly, after we win this primary and then win in November, when we get into December, January, and start talking about governing, which is the really fun part. Start solving some problems here. So let me stop there. I'll say a little bit more to wrap up. I'd be happy to take questions about any and all of that. But Tom, you ready? So Tom, you're going to come up, as I said. Yeah. I'm going to say something.